So thank you, Ryan, for having me, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. This is a real privilege and pleasure to be able to share this time with you all because I know that you're all very passionate about a subject that I'm very passionate about, which is precision health. I also find this particularly special because I did consider the late Dr. Sam Gambir as a mentor and a friend, and so it's really great to be with you. So for the next a couple of minutes, what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the precision health application in primary care that was implemented at Stanford within our primary care clinic during the year of 2018. Humanwide was a concept that was really built off of the precision health concept that was outlined by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Office of Genomics and Precision Public Health, that highlights that precision health is a framework for non-office-based and personalized approaches for diverse communities, that emphasizes disease prevention and health promotion through remote patient monitoring, genetic and pharmacogenomic services, and the integration of environmental, behavioral, and social determinants of health into primary care and population health. And so you can see the three main components of Humanwide listed here. The first being social determinants of health. For every patient who enrolled, they underwent an hour-long assessment of their social determinants of health, and then also their goals of care, what they wanted to achieve in their health with their care team. And then the second component is the remote patient monitoring and health coaching component. And that comprised of an hour-long wellness assessment with a primary care provider who was trained in health coaching to establish, again, the patient's stated goals and to collect additional information about the patient. They were also connected to 4 wireless tools that they took home that were connected to the electronic health record. We gave a blood pressure cuff, a scale, a glucometer, and something that would help us track activity, a smartphone pedometer. And then the third component was the pharmacogenomics and genetics program. The pharmacogenomics program entailed a saliva-based screening test for drug-gene interactions. And the genetic screening, we basically followed the CDC Tier 1 markers for hereditary breast and ovarian cancer syndrome, Lynch syndrome, familial hypercholesterolemia. And then collectively, these components supported a health coaching program where we would follow up with patients through a virtual visit or even in-person visit so that we could track their progress to ensure that we met their patient stated goals. As far as recruitment, this was implemented in a single academic primary care site in a community over the span of 12 months. And the patients were invited to participate through their primary care providers. We paid attention to ensuring that we had a diverse sample across all of medical complexities, race, ethnicity, and age. And all devices, pharmacogenomics, and genetic tests and the associated consultations were provided for free so that we could alleviate any potential cost issues that might interfere with full participation. Regarding data collection and analysis, we obtained implementation outcomes data to understand the penetration, the acceptability, feasibility, and sustainability of a program like this in primary care. And we also conducted semi-structured qualitative interviews at enrollment and then approximately midway through the pilot. The chart reviews captured demographic information. It also tracks some clinical outcomes relevant to Humanwide for all of the 50 patients who were enrolled. The semi-structured interviews captured, again, the feasibility and acceptability aspects of the program, looking for the identification of facilitators and barriers that would help us inform the spread. And then we were able to identify emergent themes based on those interviews, and then we mapped them to the constructs of classic implementation science outcomes like penetration, reach, acceptability, feasibility, and sustainability. You can see the patient characteristics of the study listed here. And the only thing that I will comment is that the racial and ethnic makeup of the patients that we were able to recruit reflected the patient population that was being served by the Santa Clara Clinic where this was implemented. Regarding implementation outcomes, I'm going to spend a little bit longer on this slide. So just to get started on the pharmacogenomics. So as you know that, pharmacogenomics tests detect genetic variants that are relevant for medication prescribing, such as those that make a patient particularly sensitive to a certain drug. And we were able to partner with Russ Altman, who is an expert in this field, and really benefit from his wisdom, and also refer our patients to him for consultations. We also, as providers, went through a pharmacogenomics test ourselves so that we could understand the benefits of it, the concerns perhaps with receiving that consultation, some of the worries that might come up, so that we could be even better allies when our pilot participants were going through this. As regarding the feasibility and acceptability, you can see that the acceptability was quite high. 94% of the participants agreed to go through a pharmacogenomics test. The biggest concern from an acceptability standpoint on the part of the providers, the primary care providers, they felt like they didn't have the resources they needed to provide expert consultation, and felt like they had to have a lot of back and forth with Dr. Altman to provide a comprehensive assessment. So in addition to the physicians not being able to interpret the results, we also encountered an issue regarding the sustainability along the lines of how we're going to integrate the data into the electronic health record, and then also integrate the data so that it was usable when we would review someone's medication list in the electronic health record. So that was a recommendation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on health coaching, but I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A, but I'll jump over to the genetic testing because I think a lot of people might be interested in our experience with that. So as a reminder, there are two different ways to implement a genetics program. One is to really follow the CDC guidelines, looking at family history first, identifying individuals who might be at higher genetic risk for conditions that we know if we intervene on early, we will actually be able to change the outcome. And so we implemented that strategy. But we were also interested in looking at population level screening, universal screening as well. So we offered both options to our patients, and you can see that 72% of our patients agreed to go through the genetic tests. We were happy that we were able to partner with a genetics counselor, Kelly Orman, and she was able to provide the consultations and the counseling with our patients. The genetic tests can be complicated to understand for the average primary care provider, and they rarely produce black and white results. They can be used in many different situations in healthcare, but I think that the primary care provider was struggling with first, how to convey the results, and then how to really utilize it in their own clinical practice. And so we saw this play out. The genetics counselor often provided psychological support to patients as they were receiving the results, in addition to providing the more objective data. So you can see under acceptability that that this was really a driver for participation in Humanwide. As soon as we offered the genetic testing as part of the program, we noticed that many people were very interested. And we do probably see a higher likelihood of recruiting individuals who have a known family history of cancer. They're a little bit more concerned. And so they ended up benefiting tremendously from going through the program, knowing what their status is, and getting that peace of mind. The biggest challenge for spread is, I think, for pharmacogenomics and genetic testing will be the insurance coverage. And so I'm happy to talk about that in the Q&A. But we do see that for both pharmacogenomics and genetics, that there are more and more insurance companies that are willing to reimburse for those services. And so, so that's definitely welcome. And then finally, to go through the digital health component, because I think a lot of us are interested in that part of healthcare, honestly, especially during COVID. 64% of our patients enrolled in the digital health program connected to the devices. A lot of the patients who we traditionally view as perhaps digital dividers, maybe not tech savvy, they were able to overcome those barriers with just a little bit more TLC. And so I would encourage all of us to think about ways in which we can design digital health programs so that those who might struggle initially can actually enjoy the benefits of these tools. And so you'll see that that's one of the issues and under the acceptability domain, the feasibility domain. They really did need additional hand-holding to make this successful and to address any potential issues that would exacerbate health disparities, honestly. A positive part in the acceptability domain was the primary care providers enjoyed this aspect. They really liked being able to monitor the impact of medication titration for hypertension, for diabetes, with their patients in a continuous way, and really see how patients are physiologically at home. Because right now, all we get are snapshots of their status in an office-based visit. So looking forward to that progress, and I do think that we are starting to see really a transformation happen in that domain. And so with that, I think I'll just highlight that in the health coaching domain, and then across the entire program, we did see that many of our patients were requesting language concordance, cultural concordance, and culturally sensitive care. Many of our patients were asking for health coaching on diet that was specific to their cultural background. And I think that was a lesson for us going forward. So with that, I'll just summarize by just pointing out that Humanwide provided personalized care at all points of the care continuum: wellness, prevention, treatment, chronic disease management, complex case management. We saw patients of all levels of medical complexity, and everyone benefited from at least one component of Humanwide. And then this precision health approach using remote patient monitoring and screening for genetic predispositions ended up serving as a wonderful proxy, probably working better than race as a surrogate for biology. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to move away from race-based algorithms used in medicine and move more towards precision health applications. And then I'll just highlight that further research is needed to demonstrate the impact on quality, cost effectiveness, and health equity. And also, of course, from a feasibility standpoint, we do need to see increasing reimbursement for these services. I just wanted to acknowledge Ryan is also on the list here, who helped with the design and implementation of Humanwide and the Humanwide Advisory Committee. And with that, I'll close. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure to serve on that, and it's great to see all these excellent learnings. And yeah, to that point, I'm wondering, have you been able to now take some of the things you've learned and put it into your own clinical practice?
Yes, so I think that right now we've been able to spread the model of remote patient monitoring in our primary care practices. That's been widely adopted, and increasingly the publicly reported quality programs are adopting the metric definition of a measurement at home, and that's proving to be more and more acceptable. And so it is nice to see that there is now this path to adopting remote patient monitoring in clinical practice. For genetic testing, yes, I now do recommend the direct-to-consumer tests that are available to my patients, and they're very enthusiastic about it. That, like I said, is a big patient satisfier. Pharmacogenomics, I do find it useful for patients who have a diagnosis of depression, because often that will guide our treatment. So yes, in specific use cases, I do see this continued.
And you mentioned some of I think the challenges of the pharmacogenomics, in addition to some of the great promise. How do you anticipate kind of circumventing some of those? Is it a matter of more training with the new generation of physicians? Is it additional specialists? Is it both? I mean, what do you see as, you're certainly like an expert operator as you oversee like so many things. Just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think from a feasibility standpoint, what really needs to happen is the reimbursement. Once reimbursement is underway, then the training and everything else will fall into place. But we've been having a challenging time creating a business case for a pharmacogenomics program when it's not widely reimbursed. I hope that will change in the future, but I see that as the biggest barrier. Everything else will fall into place if we do have that.
And then I guess, what do you think will drive some of that additional reimbursement? Will be, people trying to apply for additional CPT codes, and, what's going to be the driving? I know, of course, it takes time, and, some of the data you're generating will be, pivotal in being able to say, oh, look, we're providing value. But yeah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Well, I mean, for all the researchers out there, it would be very nice to be able to conduct a cost effectiveness analysis so that we can fully understand the cost savings associated with implementing wide testing for pharmacogenomics for many different indications beyond some of the ones that are currently being reimbursed. But like I mentioned, depression, hypertension. There are many conditions that would, even individuals who are on multiple medications, that would be and so there are early studies that suggest that, broad testing of pharmacogenomics could actually lead to fewer hospitalizations, fewer adverse events related to medications. But it would be nice to see it in a proper trial and then be able to use that to justify reimbursement in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I guess just one last question. In your results, Are you seeing kind of positive trends? Like it's looking encouraging. I assume the answer is yes, of course, but I had this patient. We started using some of these approaches, and now they look like they're on a better, health track than they were previously. Were you able to kind of demonstrate that with your study? I know, there's always time and other limitations.
No, absolutely. We saw anecdotally a number of positive signals. So we saw individual who had a strong family history of cardiovascular disease. He didn't have a single male family member who lived beyond 50. They all died of cardiovascular disease. He was 48 at the time. And so went through the remote patient monitoring program and office-based measurements. We never saw hypertension, but at home we did. And so we were able to start him on a medication. We used the pharmacogenomics test to craft the best regimen for him from a pharmacogenomic standpoint. And then one gentleman was suffering from muscle spasms from a statin cholesterol lowering medication. We were able to, again, use the pharmacogenomic test to understand how to dose his statin correctly. We also, for the genetic tests, gave a lot of reassurance to individuals who had a very high risk of cancer when their tests came back negative. But then also we were able to identify a number of individuals who were at high risk for breast cancer who were previously unidentified, and they now are undergoing enhanced surveillance of breast cancer because of that result. So, we have a number of examples, and I encourage you to look at our website, which is in the Stanford website, Humanwide, .stanford.edu, I believe is the website. And if you go there, you will be able to see all of the patient stories. They're all documented through a video, and I think that gives us a lot of encouragement that these components can be very useful in clinical practice going forward.